The Veltar homeworld hung before them like a diseased jewel, its surface covered with the geometric scars of strip mining and industrial waste. Commander Kang Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the Liberation Fleet's flagship and studied the planet that had spawned 4 centuries of galactic oppression. 67 capital ships in defensive formation, reported Lee Hansol from the tactical station, plus orbital defense platforms and surface-to-space batteries. They're not making this easy. Good, replied Shin Hae-jin with a fierce grin. Easy victories don't mean anything. This one's going to count. The combined Liberation Fleet represented every free species in the galaxy. Human ships flew alongside Stone Shaper asteroid fortresses and Tree Speaker biovessels, metal weaver constructs that looked like living. Silver danced around melodic One Harmony ships that sang as they moved through space. All species report ready for battle, announced Nam Yoon Seo from the communication station. The Tree Speakers are particularly eager. The Veltar burned their sacred groves last week in retaliation for the uprising. Dae-ho understood their anger. The past 6 months had seen the Veltar Empire strike back with increasing desperation. Entire civilizations had been bombed into extinction rather than allowed to rebel. Peaceful worlds had been turned into radioactive wastelands, but each atrocity had only strengthened the rebellion's resolve. Supreme Commander, called Song Min-ho from the Strategic Coordination Center, we're receiving the final targeting data from our inside sources. That was another advantage the rebellion had gained over time. Not all Veltar were willing participants in their empire's crimes. Some were slaves from conquered species, forced to serve their oppressors. Others were simply tired of endless war and destruction. The resistance had been very good at finding such people and convincing them to change sides. Primary target is the Imperial Command Complex. Min-ho continued. Secondary targets are the orbital shipyards and the planetary shield generators. If we can take out the shields, the ground assault can begin. Ground assault? Park So-min looked up from her xenobiology station. We're actually going to land on their homeworld? We have to, Dae-ho replied. Our intelligence indicates they have a doomsday weapon hidden somewhere on the surface, something that can destroy solar systems. We need to find it and make sure it's never used. The battle began with a coordinated strike by stealth fighters. Hansol led a squadron of hybrid human-alien craft through the outer defense perimeter, using technology that made them invisible to Veltar sensors. Orbital platforms neutralized, he reported as explosions blossomed around the planet. Defense grid is down to 60% efficiency. The main fleet moved in, engaging the Veltar capital ships in a running battle that stretched across the entire star system. The aliens fought with the fury of the desperate, but their tactics were predictable after 4 centuries of easy victories. They're still trying to fight us like we're primitives with spears, observed Commander Stonebreaker, whose massive fortress ship was methodically destroying Veltar cruisers. They cannot adapt to our new strategies, it was true. The Veltar had grown complacent during their long reign. They had never faced opponents with comparable technology and superior tactics. When their traditional methods failed, they had no backup plans. Their fleet is breaking, reported the Metal Weaver tactical coordinator. 17 ships destroyed, 23 withdrawing to safe distance. Don't let them escape, Dae-ho ordered. We can't afford to fight these ships again somewhere else. The Liberation Fleet pressed their advantage, hunting down fleeing Veltar vessels with ruthless efficiency. This wasn't just a battle for military advantage, it was a reckoning for 400 years of oppression. Planetary shields are fluctuating, announced Bae Jun-woo from the technical analysis station. I'm reading massive power drains from the surface. They're charging some kind of superweapon. The planet killer, So-min said grimly. We need to get down there now. Landing operations commencing, reported Kwon Ji-hoon. First wave consists of human marines, Stone Shaper tunnel fighters, and Tree Speaker stealth specialists. Dae-ho watched the tactical display as hundreds of landing craft descended toward the Veltar homeworld. The surface was a nightmare of industrial pollution and military installations. But somewhere in that maze was a weapon that could end billions of lives. I'm going down there, he announced. Sir, that's not advisable, Min-ho protested. Supreme Commander should stay with the fleet. This isn't about command structure anymore, Dae-ho replied. This is about making sure that weapon never fires. And if something goes wrong, I want to be there to fix it personally. The landing was opposed every step of the way. Veltar ground forces fought with suicidal determination, using weapons that turned the battlefield into hell. But they were facing opponents who had learned to fight in the ruins of their own worlds, who had been forged by suffering into something harder than any conqueror. Tunnel complex located, reported Ji-hoon as his Marines advanced through the industrial district. It's heavily defended, but we're breaking through. I'm detecting massive energy signatures from underground, added Hyojin, who was leading the demolition team. Whatever they're building down there, it's big enough to crack a planet. The final assault on the weapon facility was led by a joint force of humans and aliens working together as one. Stone shapers carved new tunnels through solid rock, while tree speakers used biological weapons to neutralize defense systems. Human engineers disabled alien technology, while melodic ones provided communication and coordination. It was the kind of cooperation that the Veltar had never imagined possible. "We're in," Daeho reported as his team reached the central chamber. What they found there made everyone stop and stare. The Doomsday weapon was enormous, a crystalline structure that stretched up through multiple levels of the underground complex. But it wasn't Veltar technology. The design was familiar, beautiful in its mathematical precision. Kethmori construction, Somin breathed in amazement. They built this thing. But why would a peaceful species build a planet killer? Asked one of the tree speaker warriors. Tae-young was studying the control systems, his translation equipment working furiously to decode the alien text. "It's not a weapon," he said suddenly. "It's a reset button. What do you mean?" The Kethmori designed this as a last resort against galactic tyranny. If any species became too powerful, too oppressive, this device could strip away all advanced technology in a 50-light-year radius. Send everyone back to primitive conditions and give the galaxy a chance to start over. "But that would kill billions," protested one of the human Marines. "Better than the alternative," Tae-young replied grimly. According to these records, the Kethmori activated similar devices twice before in galactic history, both times to stop species that had become too destructive to be allowed to continue. Daeho realized the implications immediately. The Veltar were going to use this against the rebellion, wipe out all technology on every world that opposed them, leaving themselves as the only space-capable civilization in the galaxy, Somin added. They could reconquer everything at their leisure. "Not if we stop them first," Hyojin said, moving toward the device with her demolition charges. "Wait," Daeho called. "Don't destroy it. We might need it ourselves someday. Sir, think about it. The galaxy has been ruled by tyrants for 400 years because no one could stop them once they became powerful enough. But this device levels the playing field. It makes sure no single species can dominate all the others." "You're talking about keeping a doomsday weapon," Ji-hoon pointed out. "I'm talking about keeping a safeguard," Daeho corrected. "Something that ensures freedom, even if we someday become the oppressors ourselves." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red as automated systems activated. "They're triggering it remotely," Tae-young shouted over the noise. "The device is charging whether we want it to or not." "How long?" Daeho demanded. "Based on these power readings, maybe 10 minutes until full activation. Can you stop it?" "Not stop it, but maybe redirect it." Tae-young's fingers flew over the Kethmori controls, rewriting targeting parameters and safety protocols with desperate speed. "If I can modify the targeting system, make it focus on Veltar technology specifically instead of all advanced technology." "Do it," Daeho ordered. "Sir, this is incredibly dangerous. One mistake and we could wipe out our own fleet. Then don't make a mistake." The next 8 minutes were the longest of Daeho's life. Around him, his team worked frantically to implement Tae-young's modifications while the weapon continued charging toward activation. On the surface, the battle raged as Veltar forces made desperate attempts to retake the facility. "Modification complete," Tae-young announced with 30 seconds to spare. "All Veltar technology within 50 light years will be permanently disabled. Everything else should be unaffected." "Should be? We're dealing with 400-year-old alien technology that was designed by a species we've never met. There are no guarantees." The device activated with a sound like reality tearing apart. Energy cascaded through dimensions that humans had no names for, reaching out across space to touch every piece of technology that The communication array hidden in Luna's far side crater looked like a metal flower blooming from gray rock. Commander Kang Dae-ho watched through the observation window as technicians made final adjustments to equipment that should not have existed. "Are you sure this will work?" he asked Im Tae-young, who was nervously checking calculations on his tablet. 90% sure, Tae-young replied. "We've reverse-engineered the Veltar communication protocols, modified them with Keth Mori safety principles, and boosted the signal using human engineering. In theory, we should be able to reach any rebellion in the galaxy. And in practice? In practice, we might accidentally announce our location to every Veltar ship within 50 light years." Dae-ho nodded grimly. It was a risk they had to take. 6 months of fighting had taught them that humanity alone could not defeat the Veltar Empire. They needed allies, and according to the stolen data, those allies were already fighting their own wars of liberation. "Signal strength is optimal," reported Kwon Ji-hoon from the control station. The Space Marine had volunteered to command the lunar base after his unit was wiped out, defending the Sol orbital elevator. "We're ready to transmit." Dae-ho activated the communicator. "This is Commander Kang Dae-ho of the Terran Defense Force calling any resistance forces in the galaxy. If you can hear this message, you are not alone. Earth stands with you." They waited. Space was vast and communication took time. Even with Veltar technology, hours passed with only static. Then a voice crackled through the speakers, speaking in musical tones that the translation software converted to English. "Earth vessel. This is Harmony Singer Veltai of the Melodic Ones. We thought our people were the only ones fighting. How is this possible?" More voices joined in. A species called the Stone Shapers, whose world was a network of underground cities. The Metal Weavers, who built their civilization in the rings of a gas giant. The Tree Speakers, whose forest worlds had been burned to create Veltar farming colonies. 13 rebellions, Park So-min whispered in amazement as she monitored the transmissions, all happening at the same time. "Not a coincidence," observed Bae Jun-woo, who had been studying patterns in Veltar expansion. "They overextended themselves. Too many conquests, too many occupied worlds, not enough ships to maintain control everywhere." The first joint meeting of the Galactic Resistance took place 3 days later. Representatives from each species appeared on the main screen as holographic projections, creating a rainbow of alien forms in the small command center. "We have been fighting for 2 of your years," said Commander Stonebreaker of the Underground Dwellers. His species looked like walking boulders with glowing crystal eyes, but we lack the technology to strike at Veltar ships. "Our world forests burn faster than we can regrow them," added Speaker Branch Whisper, whose tree-like form swayed with emotional distress. "Without weapons that can reach orbit, we cannot stop the bombardments." Dae-ho listened to similar stories from each species. All were brave, all were determined, but none had been able to develop effective counterweapons. The Veltar pattern of conquest was simple but effective. Destroy all technology during the initial attack, then use superior firepower to crush any organized resistance. "We may have a solution," Dae-ho said when it was his turn to speak. He nodded to So-min, who began transmitting technical specifications. "Human engineers have successfully reverse-engineered Veltar technology," So-min explained. "We can build weapons and shields using their own principles against them. More importantly, we can teach you how to build them too." The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had been fighting with primitive weapons for years suddenly saw hope for the first time since their conquest. "This is incredible," breathed Harmony Singer Veltai. "Your people have accomplished in months what we could not do in years." "How is this possible?" asked Engineer Prime Function of the Metal Weavers. "Because humans are very good at taking things apart and putting them back together," replied Shin Hee-jin with a grin. "It's kind of our specialty." But it was Nam Yun-seo, their newly appointed diplomatic coordinator, who asked the crucial question, "What do you need from us in return?" "Coordination," Dae-ho replied immediately. "The Veltar are strongest when they can fight us one at a time. But if we attack simultaneously across multiple systems, they won't be able to respond effectively." "You're proposing a galaxy-wide rebellion," said Commander Stonebreaker. "I'm proposing a galaxy-wide liberation," Dae-ho corrected. "The Veltar have been parasites for 400 years, feeding off the work of species they've conquered. It's time to remove the parasites. The planning took weeks. Each species contributed their unique strengths to the growing alliance." The Stone Shapers provided mining expertise and underground manufacturing facilities. The Tree Speakers offered biological knowledge and camouflage techniques. The Metal Weavers shared advanced material science. But it was humanity that provided the crucial element: the ability to turn Veltar technology against itself. The irony is beautiful, Junwoo commented as he worked on adapting human innovations for alien physiology. The Veltar stole this technology from peaceful species, but they never understood the peaceful principles it was built on. Now we're using those same principles to destroy their empire. The first coordinated strike came 2 months later. Simultaneously across 13 star systems, rebellion forces struck at Veltar installations, using weapons and tactics developed on Earth. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Veltar fleet movements are completely chaotic, reported Ji-hoon from the lunar observation post. They're pulling ships from everywhere, trying to respond to attacks on all fronts. Which means their occupation forces are weakening, added Lee Han-sol, who was leading fighter squadrons equipped with hybrid human-alien technology. Perfect time for Phase 2. Phase 2 was audacious even by human standards. While Veltar fleets scrambled to contain rebellions on the outer worlds, Earth launched a direct assault on their regional command center in the Proxima Centauri system. Remember, Daeho told his strike force as they prepared to depart, we're not just fighting for Earth anymore. Billions of beings across the galaxy are counting on us to prove that the Veltar can be beaten. The battle for Proxima Centauri lasted 18 hours. Human ships, redesigned with alien technology and crewed by volunteers from every resistance cell on Earth, faced off against a Veltar fleet that had never lost a major engagement. The aliens fought with desperate fury, but their tactics were 400 years out of date. They expected their enemies to form battle lines and exchange fire at long range, the way military forces had fought for millennia. Instead, they faced swarms of small, fast ships that darted in and out of their formations like angry bees. Human pilots, trained in three-dimensional thinking by centuries of atmospheric flight, danced through space in patterns the Veltar couldn't predict or counter. Their ships are too big, too slow, Han-sol reported as his squadron crippled another Veltar cruiser. It's like trying to swat flies with a hammer. When the smoke cleared, the Veltar Regional Command was in ruins and their fleet was scattered. More importantly, the victory was broadcast across the galaxy by the Resistance Communication Network. Every species in the galaxy now knows the truth, Seo reported during the post-battle briefing. The Veltar are not invincible. They can be beaten. What's their response? Daeho asked. Panic, So-min replied with satisfaction. Intercepted communications show complete confusion in their command structure. They're pulling forces from everywhere trying to figure out what went wrong. And our allies? Rebellions are breaking out on worlds that have been occupied for decades. The Tree Speakers have retaken 3 of their forest worlds. The Stone Shapers have driven Veltar ground forces off their mining colonies. Even species we haven't contacted are rising up. Tae-young looked up from his analysis of captured Veltar data. There's something else. The aliens are receiving new orders from their home system. Something about a final solution and acceptable losses. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. They're going to try to destroy everything rather than lose control, Daeho said quietly. How much damage can they do? Ji-hoon asked. According to these files, Tae-young replied grimly, they have weapons that can sterilize entire star systems. Planet killers left over from the species they've conquered. Then we need to stop them before they can use those weapons, Daeho said. How long do we have? Based on fleet movements and communication delays, maybe 6 months before they can organize a coordinated response. Daeho looked around the room at his people. 6 months to save not just Earth, but every free world in the galaxy. 6 months to end 400 years of oppression. Then we'd better get started, he said. Outside the lunar base, stars twinkled in the blackness of space. Each one potentially held worlds where free beings were fighting for their lives against alien oppressors. But for the first time since the war began, those beings were not fighting alone. Humanity had given them hope, weapons, and most importantly, the knowledge that the Veltar could be beaten. Now it was time to finish what they had started. The alien research station hung in space like a metal spider, all angles and sharp edges against the star field. Commander Kang Dae-ho watched it through the viewport of their stolen transport ship and tried not to think about how insane this mission was. 2 minutes to Docking, announced Lee Han-sol from the pilot's seat. He had learned to fly alien ships the same way he learned everything else, by jumping in and figuring it out as he went along. Park So-min checked her equipment one more time. Remember, we need at least 10 minutes inside their computer systems to download everything. The translation program I built should work, but alien code is strange. Strange how? Asked Shin Hee-jin, who was carrying enough explosives to level a city block. It thinks differently than we do. Like the difference between human music and whale songs. We can hear it, but it doesn't make sense until you understand how whales think. The mission had started 3 months ago when Chomi-Rei's scouts discovered something unusual. The aliens were building research stations throughout the solar system, but they were being very careful about security. Too careful for simple scientific research. They're hiding something, Mireille had argued during the planning meeting. Something important enough to risk putting stations where we might attack them. She had been right. The station they were approaching contained the largest alien computer database ever found. If So-min was correct, it might hold the secrets of Veltar technology. Docking complete, Han-sol reported. Their security systems think we're a supply ship. That should give us maybe 20 minutes before they figure out we don't belong here. Daeho led the team through the airlock into corridors that seemed designed for creatures much taller than humans. The walls were covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly, and the air tasted of metal and electricity. This way, So-min whispered, following the signals from her scanner. The main computer core should be at the center of the station. They moved quickly but carefully through the maze of passages. The aliens they encountered were busy with their own tasks and barely glanced at the humans in stolen uniforms. Daeho realized that the Veltar were so confident in their superiority that they couldn't imagine humans infiltrating their most secure facilities, that arrogance was about to cost them everything. The computer core was a massive chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. So-min immediately began connecting her equipment while Hee-jin planted explosive charges at strategic points. How long? Daeho asked. 7 minutes if I'm lucky. 15 if the translation program has problems, So-min replied, her fingers flying over alien controls. It took 12 minutes. When the downloads were complete, So-min's face was pale with shock. We need to leave now, this information. She shook her head. This changes everything. They fought their way back to the ship as station alarms began to wail. Hee-jin's explosives had done their job, creating enough chaos to cover their escape. By the time the aliens realized what had happened, the humans were already halfway back to Earth. Tell me, Daeho said once they were safely away. So-min called up the translated files on her computer. The Veltar Empire isn't what we thought. They're not conquerors. They're scavengers. She showed them images of worlds burning, species fleeing in terror, civilizations collapsing. But it wasn't the Veltar doing the destroying. Every planet they've conquered, every species they've absorbed, they waited until something else weakened them first. Wars, plagues, natural disasters. The Veltar show up after the damage is done and finish off the survivors. That's why their technology doesn't make sense, added a new voice. Im Tae-young, their best cryptographer, had been working on decoding the alien archives for weeks. They've been stealing pieces from 17 different species. Each weapon, each ship, each computer system came from someone else. Daeho studied the data. Then where did all this technology originally come from? That's the really interesting part, Tae-young continued. Most of it came from one species called the Kethmori. They were apparently brilliant scientists and engineers. The Veltar absorbed them about 400 years ago. Absorbed how? So-min pulled up another file. The images showed creatures that looked almost human, with elongated skulls and 6-fingered hands. They were beautiful in an alien way, and their cities were works of art that seemed to grow from the landscape itself. The Kethmori were pacifists, So-min explained. They never developed weapons, never built armies. When the Veltar attacked, they had no way to defend themselves. The entire species was wiped out in a single day. But their technology lived on, Tae-young added. The Veltar stole everything. Their science, their engineering, even their art. But they never understood the principles behind it. They just copy what the Kethmori built. Hee-jin was studying the technical specifications of various alien weapons. Look at this. The energy rifles, the ship drives, even their life support systems. They all have safety limits built in. Limits that make no sense for the Veltar. What kind of limits? Daeho asked. Temperature ranges that are too narrow, power settings that are too conservative, operational parameters that seem designed to prevent accidents rather than maximize effectiveness. She looked up from the data. It's like the Keth Mori designed everything to be safe rather than deadly. Peaceful people building peaceful technology, So Min mused. Technology that was stolen and turned into weapons of conquest. There's more, Tae-young said quietly. The database contains records of other species fighting back. 13 different worlds are currently in rebellion against the Veltar Empire. Daeho felt his heart race. We're not alone, not even close. But here's what makes us special. We're the first species to successfully reverse engineer Veltar technology during an active occupation. Every other rebellion has been limited to primitive weapons and guerrilla tactics. Why are we different? So-min smiled for the first time in months. Because humans are good at taking things apart and putting them back together in new ways. We're natural engineers, and apparently that's exactly what the galaxy needs right now. The ship shuddered as they entered Earth's atmosphere. Below them, the planet still bore the scars of the initial attack, but there were signs of life returning. Smoke from hidden factories, lights moving through tunnel networks, the occasional flash of explosions as resistance fighters struck at alien patrols. What's our next move? Hansol asked. Daeho was already planning. We share this information with every resistance cell on Earth. Then we figure out how to contact the other rebellions. And after that? After that, we teach the Veltar what happens when scavengers try to prey on species that fight back. He looked at the data scrolling across So-min's screen. They've been successful for 400 years because they only attack the weak and helpless. But they made a mistake with us. What mistake? They assumed we were as peaceful as the Keth Mori. They never considered that some species might actually get stronger when they're attacked. As their ship descended toward the hidden landing strip that Mirai's people had carved from the ruins of an old airport, Daeho thought about the Keth Mori. Beautiful, brilliant, peaceful people who had created wonders of science and art, only to see it all stolen and perverted by scavengers. But their legacy lived on in ways the Veltar had never imagined. Every weapon the aliens fired, every ship they flew, every system they operated was built on Keth Mori principles of safety and sustainability, principles that humans were about to turn against their oppressors. The Veltar had spent 400 years conquering the galaxy, with stolen technology they didn't understand. Now they were about to face opponents who understood it better than they did. The revolution was about to begin, and this time, the scavengers would be the ones running for their lives. 2 weeks after the burning, humanity lived like moles. Cho Mirai led Daeho through a network of tunnels that stretched beneath what used to be New Seoul. The passages were narrow and dark, lit only by battery-powered lights that cast dancing shadows on the concrete walls. The air smelled of dust and fear. We have 300 people down here, Mirai explained as they walked. Families mostly, but also soldiers, scientists, engineers. Anyone who was lucky enough to be underground when the aliens attacked. They reached a larger chamber where people sat in small groups, talking quietly. Children played with broken toys while their parents watched the tunnel entrances nervously. Everyone looked tired and hungry, but they were alive. How long can you keep them fed? Daeho asked. 2 months, maybe 3 if we're careful, Mirai replied. But that's not our biggest problem. She led him to a smaller room where Park So-min was bent over a table covered with strange devices. The pieces of alien technology glowed with an inner light that hurt to look at directly. What did you find? Daeho asked. So-min looked up, her eyes bright with excitement. Something incredible. These weapons don't work the way we thought. She picked up what looked like a rifle, except it was made of some kind of black metal that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. The energy doesn't come from the weapon itself, she continued. It comes from somewhere else. The gun is just a doorway. It opens a hole to another place where there's unlimited power. Daeho frowned. That's impossible. You can't create energy from nothing. Exactly, So-min said. Which means the aliens didn't invent this technology. They're using something they don't completely understand. A new voice spoke from the doorway. She's right. A thin man with thick glasses entered the room. He had the pale look of someone who spent his life indoors, studying books and equations. This is Bae Junwoo, Mirai said. He used to work at the Institute for Advanced Physics before the attack. Junwoo picked up another piece of alien equipment, a small device that looked like a crystalline flower. I've been studying these for days. The mathematical principles are all wrong. The aliens are using technology they stole from someone else. How can you tell? Deho asked. Because there are safety limits built into every device. Limits that don't make sense for the aliens. Junwoo pointed to markings on the crystal device. Look at these symbols. They're warnings, but they're written in a completely different language than the operating instructions. So-min nodded eagerly. It's like finding a car with Japanese warning labels but English instructions. Someone else built these weapons and the aliens are just using them. Before Daeho could respond, they heard footsteps running down the tunnel. Lee Han-sol appeared in the doorway, breathing hard and grinning. We did it, he said. We actually did it. Did what? Mireille demanded. Remember that patrol of alien soldiers that's been searching the subway tunnels? We set a trap. Han-sol was practically bouncing with excitement. Used their own weapons against them. Turned their energy rifles around and fired them back through their armor. Daeho felt his heart skip. You killed aliens? 3 of them. And we captured their equipment. Han-sol's expression grew more serious. But that's not the best part. They called for help using some kind of communicator. We heard them talking. What did they say? They were scared, sir. Actually scared. They kept saying something that sounded like impossible and not in the pattern. I think we did something they've never seen before. So-min looked thoughtful. If they're following a pattern, then they've conquered other worlds the same way. Probably many worlds. But none of those worlds fought back effectively, Junwoo added. That's why they're scared. We're not behaving the way their victims are supposed to behave. Mireille was already moving, grabbing weapons and communication equipment. Then we need to keep doing things they don't expect. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and disappear before they can respond. Over the next few days, the resistance began to take shape. Mireille's people knew every tunnel, every hidden passage, every forgotten basement in the city. They used this knowledge to strike at alien patrols and disappear like ghosts. Daeho established contact with other survivor groups around the world. In the ruins of London, former Special Forces soldiers were using hunting rifles and homemade explosives to harass alien supply lines. In what remained of Tokyo, engineers were building traps that used the aliens' own technology against them. The pattern is the same everywhere, So-min reported during one of their planning meetings. The aliens are having trouble adapting to guerrilla warfare. They keep expecting us to form armies and fight them directly. Instead, we're acting like rats, Han-sol said with satisfaction, biting them and running away. But the aliens were learning too. They responded to human attacks with increased brutality, burning entire city blocks to eliminate single resistance cells. The orbital bombardments became more frequent and more precise. They're trying to break our spirit, Mireille said as they watched another neighborhood burn on a hijacked television feed. Make us so afraid that we'll surrender. Will it work? Asked a young woman named Shin Hye-jin, who had joined their group after her family was killed in a bombing. She had training as an engineer and had been helping Junwoo study alien technology. Not with humans, Daeho replied. The harder they hit us, the angrier we get. And angry humans are dangerous humans. As if to prove his point, Hye-jin held up a small device she had been working on. I figured out how to overload their energy weapons. Plant this on their equipment and it explodes like a grenade. How many can you make? Mireille asked. As many as you want, as long as we keep capturing their gear. That night, Han-sol led a raid on an alien supply depot. Using Hye-jin's explosive devices and tactics learned from weeks of guerrilla fighting, they destroyed enough equipment to supply a small army. But when they returned to the tunnels, they found So-min waiting with troubling news. I've been monitoring alien communications, she said. They're calling for reinforcements. A lot of reinforcements. It sounds like they're planning something big. How big? Daeho asked. Big enough that they're pulling ships from other star systems. They're bringing their entire fleet to Earth. The room fell silent. They had been winning small victories. But they were still just a handful of survivors hiding in holes. Against the entire alien fleet, they had no chance. There's something else, So-min continued. I picked up transmissions from other star systems. The aliens aren't just fighting us. There are rebellions happening on other worlds too. Junwoo looked up from the alien device he was studying. That makes sense. If they've been conquering planets using the same methods, they probably have the same problems everywhere. You mean we're not alone? Hye-jin asked. We're not alone, Daeho confirmed. And if there are other species fighting back, then maybe we can help each other. He looked around the room at the faces of his people. They were tired, hungry, and afraid, but they were also determined. The aliens had burned their cities and killed their families, but they had not broken the human spirit. The aliens made a mistake, he said. They thought we would surrender like everyone else. Instead, they've taught us how to fight. And now we're going to teach them what happens when you attack humanity. Outside, the alien ships continued their patrols, searching for the resistance fighters who refused to die. They had expected an easy conquest, just like all the others. They were about to learn that humans were different. Very different. The morning sky over New Seoul was wrong. Instead of blue, it glowed orange and red like a furnace. Commander Kang Dae-ho stood on the rooftop of what used to be the Defense Command Center and watched his world burn. 3 hours ago, he had been drinking coffee and reading reports about routine patrol missions. 3 hours ago, Earth had been at peace. 3 hours ago, humanity thought they were alone in the universe. Now massive alien ships hung in the sky like dark clouds, and everything Dae-ho had ever known was turning to ash. Sir, we need to move, said Lieutenant Park So-min, climbing through the rubble to reach him. Her uniform was torn and covered in dust, but her eyes were sharp and focused. The building won't hold much longer. Dae-ho nodded but didn't move. He couldn't stop staring at the destruction. The aliens had hit every major city on Earth at the same time. London, Tokyo, New York, Mumbai, all burning. The orbital defense platforms that were supposed to protect them had been destroyed before they could fire a single shot. How many ships? He asked. We count at least 200 over major population centers, So-min replied, but there could be more. Our satellites are down. The aliens called themselves the Veltar Empire. They had sent one message before the attack began: surrender or burn. Humanity had 30 seconds to respond before the first energy beam struck the Earth. 30 seconds to decide the fate of 8 billion people. The world leaders never got the chance to answer. A young pilot stumbled onto the rooftop, his flight suit singed and his face black with smoke. Dae-ho recognized him. Lee Han-sol, one of their best fighter pilots. He should have been dead. His squadron had been stationed at Osan Air Base, which was now a crater. How did you survive? Dae-ho asked. Han-sol sat down heavily on a chunk of concrete. I was in the bathroom when they hit. The blast threw me into a maintenance tunnel. When I crawled out, everything was gone. My friends, my squadron, everything. His voice was flat, emotionless. Shocked, Dae-ho realized. The other bases? All gone, sir. I flew over what's left of them. Nothing but holes in the ground. So-min was working on a portable computer trying to establish contact with other surviving units. I'm picking up scattered transmissions, she said. Small groups hiding in basements, subway tunnels, anywhere underground. But no organized resistance. That was when Dae-ho saw her. A woman was climbing up through the stairwell, moving quietly and carefully. She had short black hair and wore civilian clothes, but she carried herself like a soldier. When she reached the rooftop, she didn't look surprised to find them there. You're Kang Dae-ho, she said. It wasn't a question. Who's asking? Chomirai. I run a network of safe houses across the city. Underground tunnels that the government doesn't know about. She looked at the burning cityscape. Looks like we're going to need them. Dae-ho studied her face. You were prepared for this. Not for aliens, no. But I've been preparing for war for a long time, the kind where the powerful crush the weak. She turned to face him. The difference is now we're all the weak ones. A new sound filled the air, a deep humming that seemed to come from everywhere at once. They looked up to see one of the alien ships moving directly overhead. It was massive, easily 1 kilometer long, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They're scanning, So-min whispered. The ship passed over them without stopping, but Dae-ho felt something cold in his stomach. They had been seen. The aliens knew exactly where they were, but for some reason they didn't attack. Why didn't they kill us? Han-sol asked. It was a good question. The aliens had shown no mercy so far. They had burned cities full of innocent people without warning, but now they were letting survivors live. Maybe they want prisoners, So-min suggested. Or maybe they want us to suffer, Mireille said bitterly. Dae-ho was thinking about something else. During the attack, he had watched the alien weapons fire. The energy beams didn't behave like any human weapon he knew. They curved in flight, seeking their targets like living things. But there had been something odd about the pattern of destruction. So-min, pull up the targeting data from the attack. She worked quickly on her computer. What am I looking for? Show me which buildings they hit first in each city. The data appeared on the screen as a series of red dots. Deho studied the pattern for a long moment, then smiled grimly. They went after our command centers, communication hubs, and military bases first. But look at the timing. He pointed to the timestamps. They hit everything at exactly the same moment. No adaptation, no adjustment for local conditions. So? Hansol asked. So they're following a script. They've done this before, probably many times. Same targets, same timing, same methods. Deho stood up, feeling hope for the first time since the attack began. That means they're not as smart as they want us to think. Mireille looked skeptical. They just burned half our planet. How is that not smart? Because they think the war is already over, Deho replied. They expect us to surrender like everyone else they've conquered. But humans don't work that way. As if to prove his point, explosions bloomed in the distance. Someone was fighting back, using whatever weapons they could find. The alien ships responded immediately, but their reaction was slow and predictable. We need to get underground, Deho said. Find other survivors, organize resistance cells. The aliens might have better weapons, but they don't understand us. What's our objective? Somin asked. Survive, learn, and make them regret coming to our world. They gathered what equipment they could carry and headed for the stairwell. As they descended into the darkness, Deho looked back one last time at the burning sky. The aliens had fired the first shot, and it had nearly destroyed humanity. But the war was far from over. Behind them, the alien ships continued their patrol, confident in their victory. They had conquered 17 other species using the same methods. None had ever fought back effectively. They had never encountered humans before. In the tunnels beneath the city, in hidden bunkers around the world, in the hearts of 8 billion people who refused to die quietly, something was stirring. The aliens had expected fear and surrender. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous: human determination. The real war was about to begin.